Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. I'm Grace, and today, wow, we're tackling a big one, a really mind-bending question. If we're actually living in a simulation, who wrote the code?
It really is big. And what's fascinating here is how this idea, the simulation hypothesis, has moved beyond just science fiction. It's hitting the mainstream.
Totally. It feels like everyone's talking about it, or at least thinking about it.
Yeah, and you've got prominent people like Elon Musk, for instance, publicly saying the argument for it is quite strong. He even said, we are most likely in a simulation. When someone like that says it, you kind of have to take it seriously, don't you?
You really do. It pushes it out of the realm of just like late-night thought experiments. So today, we're going deep. We're looking at the arguments for simulation, then asking, okay, who could this programmer be? Future humans? Aliens? Something else entirely?
Right. And maybe the biggest question of all, why? Why run this incredibly complex program? We've pulled together a lot of different perspectives for this ancient philosophy, modern physics papers, even some really interesting threads from online communities where people are deeply wrestling with
It's
it.
going to be multifaceted for sure. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is the simulation hypothesis? It sounds super modern digital age stuff.
Well, yes and no. The idea of questioning reality, of wondering if what we see is real, that goes way, way back. It's not just a product of computers.
Like ancient philosophy.
Absolutely. Think about ancient China. You have Zhuangzi, the Taoist philosopher, right? His famous butterfly dream. He dreams he's a butterfly, wakes up and wonders, am I Zhuangzi who dreamt I was a butterfly? Or a butterfly dreaming I'm Zhuangzi? It's that fundamental uncertainty.
That feeling of what's really real. Yeah.
And in Indian philosophy, there's the concept of Maya. It's often translated as an illusion, but it's deeper than that. It suggests the world we experience is more like a cosmic play, a manifestation, not the ultimate reality.
And the West had its own versions too, right? Like Plato.
Exactly. Plato's allegory of the cave is a huge one. The prisoner's chained up, only seeing shadows on the wall.
Yeah, and they think the shadows are reality because it's all they've ever known.
Precisely. Plato used it to argue our senses might just show us shadows of a higher, truer reality, the formants it. It's a direct challenge.
Yeah.
Is what you see really real.
And then Descartes, much later, with his evil demon.
René Descartes, yeah. In the 17th century, he imagined this powerful, malicious demon deceiving him about everything. Even basic math, like 2 plus 2 is 4, could he trust anything?
Which led him to, I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. The one thing the demon couldn't fake was his own act of doubting, of thinking.
Right. And that line of thinking leads straight into more modern thought experiments, like the brain in a vat.
Ah, okay. The idea that your brain could be hooked up to a supercomputer feeding you all your experiences.
Exactly. You'd feel like you're living a normal life, seeing, hearing, touching, but none of it would correspond to, actual external reality. It would all be simulated input. Could you tell the difference?
Probably not, which is the scary part, if you can't tell. This is bad.
That's a whole other philosophical rabbit hole. But yeah, this idea set the stage. Then computing came along and gave it all a very new sort of technological flavor.
Right. So who started connecting computers to the universe itself?
Well, a key figure was Konrad Zuse, a German computer pioneer. Back in 1969, he actually proposed that the universe itself might be fundamentally computational, like running on a grid, discrete units. This was the seed of digital physics.
Wow, 1969, that's early.
It is. Then you had people like Hans Moravec, the AI and robotics guy. He started speculating seriously about future intelligences, creating simulations maybe of their ancestors, like us. He even tried to estimate the computing power needed.
But the argument that really blew things up was Nick Bostrom's, right? The
Yeah.
2003 paper.
Oh, absolutely. Nick Bostrom, philosopher at Oxford, his paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?, introduced the simulation argument, often called the trilemma. It's become the cornerstone of the modern debate.
The trilemma. Okay, break that down for us. It's basically saying one of three things has to be true.
Exactly. It's a logical forcing function. So possibility number one, almost all human-level civilizations go extinct before they reach a post-human stage.
Post-human meaning super advanced, like capable of running these detailed simulations.
Precisely. Technologically mature, immense computing power. So if this first option is true, it implies we're likely doomed. There's some great filter ahead of us, or maybe we just passed one, that stops civilizations from getting that far. Bostrom thinks this would be a striking revelation if true.
Okay, so that's option one. We don't make it. What's the second?
Option two. Almost all post-human civilizations simply lose interest in running ancestor simulations. They reach that godlike technological stage, but they just don't bother simulating pasts like ours.
Why would they lose interest? It seems like something incredibly advanced beings would do for science or history or whatever.
That's Bostrom's point. He finds this surprising because it would require this massive convergence of behavior across basically all advanced civilizations. Given the potential benefits research exploring possibilities, why would everyone decide not to? Seems unlikely.
Okay, so option 1, we go extinct. Option 2, advanced civilizations just aren't interested in simulating us. What's left?
Option 3, we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. If civilizations do typically reach the posthuman stage, option 1 is false, and they do typically run lots of ancestor simulations, option 2 is false, then statistically, simulated minds like ours would vastly outnumber original biological minds. So chances are we're one of the simulated ones.
Wow, okay. So Bostrom isn't saying we are in a simulation, just that one of these 3 must be the case.
Exactly. He stresses he doesn't know which one is true, suggesting maybe roughly equal probabilities. But the power of the argument is forcing us to confront these possibilities. Each one is, as he says, a striking revelation.
It really reframes everything, though some people, like David Chalmers, seem more convinced we are in one, right?
Yeah, Chalmers, in his book, Reality Plus, definitely leans more heavily into the simulation likelihood being extremely high. He takes Bostrom's argument and pushes it further.
Okay, so philosophy and logic point toward these possibilities, but can we actually test this? Is there any science we can do, or is it just speculation forever?
That is the crucial question, isn't it? And yeah, some physicists are actually trying to figure that out. Can we find physical evidence? People like Silas Bean, Zora Davuti, Martin Savage, they published a paper exploring this.
What kind of evidence are they looking for?
Well, their idea is that if the simulation runs on finite resources, like any computer we know, it might leave detectable artifacts. One possibility is a grid-like spacetime.
Like pixels, our universe isn't smooth, but made of tiny dots. Sort of, yeah. If space-time is discrete at some incredibly small level, it might affect how things travel. Ultra-high-energy cosmic rays, for example, might behave slightly differently depending on their direction relative to this underlying grid. Anisotropies, they call it.
Like hitting the grain of the simulation.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. Another idea is looking for signs of quantum error correction.
Like spell check for reality.
Huh. Kind of. In quantum computing, you need error correction to keep calculations stable. If our universe is a simulation, maybe similar error-correcting codes are woven into its fabric to maintain consistency. Finding evidence of that kind of underlying structure could be a clue.
What about just glitches, bugs in the system?
That's another avenue people speculate about. Are there inexplicable anomalies, things that just don't fit our physical laws? Or maybe even subtle variations in physical constants like the speed of light or gravity in different parts of the universe, or over time? Maybe the programmers are tweaking things, or the simulation has resource limits.
So weird physics could be evidence? Potentially. But it's incredibly hard to distinguish a glitch from just physics we don't understand yet. And there are major challenges to testing this at all.
Like what?
Well, the computational complexity problem is a big one. Some argue simulating our universe, especially down to the quantum level, would require a computer more complex than the universe itself, which seems paradoxical. Where would you build such a computer?
Right. You need a bigger box to hold the box.
Exactly. And then there's the criticism that the hypothesis might be unfalsifiable. If you can explain any observation as either part of the simulation's design or a glitch, how can you ever prove it wrong? Physicist Sabine Hossenfelder is quite critical, calling it borderline pseudoscience for this reason.
If you can't disprove it, it's not really science.
That's the argument. And Frank Wilczek raises another point. It kind of begs the question, if we're simulated, what's the simulator's reality made of? Are they simulated? It can lead to this infinite regress simulations all the way down without ever reaching a fundamental reality.
Okay, so lots of challenges, but let's assume, just for this deep dive, that maybe we are in one. That shifts the question from if to who. Who programmed us?
Right. And this is where the speculation really takes off. If there's a programmer or designers,
Yeah.
what could they be like?
The possibilities seem endless. I mean, one common idea, tying back to Bostrom, is future humans, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they're AI creations.
Yeah, that's a big one. Our descendants achieve superintelligence and are running ancestor simulations. Maybe to study history, learn from our mistakes, figure out how they got where they are.
So we could be like a history lesson for our great-great-great whatever, grandkids.
So they're AIs, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not humans at all. Maybe it's advanced external aliens. Some vastly different civilization running simulations for their own purposes. Scientific research, maybe.
Exploring how life evolves under different rules.
Could be. Or maybe it's something more abstract, like Bostrom's singleton idea. A single dominant entity, maybe an AI, a world government, even a shared moral code that controls its reality and runs simulations for some grand purpose we can't fathom.
And then there are the less serious theories.
Oh yeah, like the cosmic child idea. Someone on Reddit joked about a 13-year-old kid playing Minecraft Earth Sim Edition. Or just the idea that creation is a hobby for some incredibly advanced being, not necessarily profound, just something they do.
It's kind of humbling, or maybe terrifying, to think our entire existence could be someone else's pastime.
It definitely puts things in perspective, and it raises huge questions about our own perception. If we're coded, can we only see what the code allows?
The ant analogy comes up a lot here, doesn't it? Like ants in an anthill, they react if you poke their nest, but they can't comprehend us, the poker.
Exactly. They experience the effect, but the cause, the intelligence behind it, is completely beyond their scope. Are we just ants reacting to the stick of the programmers? Could we ever truly understand their nature or their reality?
Someone online mentioned the scale difference is just mind-boggling. An ant to a human is like a human to a skyscraper.
Yeah.
And that skyscraper too, part of the moon. The programmers could be operating on a scale we literally cannot conceive of.
That scale comparison really hits home. It suggests our perception might be fundamentally limited by the simulation itself. We might be coded not to see the walls of our own reality.
Which leads back to that infinite regress idea. If we're simulated, could our programmers be simulated too? Turtles all the way down.
Precisely. One of the sources, the Phil Papers article, really digs into this. It talks about how virtual machines can be nested, a simulation running inside another simulation, inside another, potentially infinitely.
So Universe 0 runs on Computer 1 in Universe 1, built by Civilization 1. And Universe 1 runs on Computer 2 in Universe 2, and so on.
That's the model they propose. The initial rule sets up the first layer, and the successor rule repeats it infinitely. Each level down or up, depending how you look at it, the computer and the civilization are earlier, more powerful, and more intelligent.
An infinite stack of realities, each one more advanced than the last. Where does it end? Or does it?
Well, this is where the Phil Papers source makes its most radical leap. It argues that this infinite series of increasingly powerful finite computers, it actually converges to something infinite. It converges to God.
Whoa. Okay. Converges to God. How does that work?
They conceptualize this ultimate level, H omega, as an infinitely deep computer, not just super powerful, but infinitely so. They use the term accelerating universal Turing machine, or ATM.
An ATM, like a cash machine.
No, different ATM. A theoretical computer that can perform an infinite number of calculations in a finite time. It's a model for essentially infinite intelligence and processing speed. This God at level omega is described as maximally early, creative, powerful, and intelligent.
So the ultimate source code, the ultimate hardware.
Kind of. And critically, they describe this God as pure hardware, not physical like the finite computers in the stack below. Its reality is deeper than any physicality, more like a pure mind, a pure unity whose thoughts generate complexity.
That's a lot to take in. It's basically deriving a concept of God from the logic of nested simulations.
It's a fascinating philosophical move, connecting computation theory directly to theology. And it naturally leads us to think about the overlaps between the simulation hypothesis and ideas like intelligent design.
Right, because if there's a programmer, isn't that just intelligent design with a modern techie name, a mastermind designer?
There's definitely a strong parallel. Intelligent design, or ID, argues certain features of the universe, especially in biology, are too complex to have arisen by chance or natural selection alone. They must point to an intelligent cause.
They use concepts like irreducible complexity, right? Michael Behe's idea about things like bacterial flagella being too complex to evolve step by step.
Exactly. Like a mousetrap, take away one part, and it doesn't work at all. Behe argued some biological systems are like that. And then there's William Dembski's specified complexity. The idea that complex patterns, like in DNA, that also match an independent specification, can't arise randomly. Think Shakespeare versus random letters.
But haven't those arguments been pretty strongly challenged by the scientific community?
Oh, absolutely. Behe's irreducible complexity claims, for instance, were specifically addressed and, according to the court in the Kitzmiller v. Dover case, refuted in peer-reviewed research. Scientists showed plausible evolutionary pathways for things like the flagellum, using pre-existing parts. Dembski's math has also been heavily criticized as flawed or tautological.
ID proponents also talk about the fine-tuned universe, don't they? The idea that physical constants are just perfectly set for life.
Yes, the fine-tuning argument is central. They argue that if gravity or the strength of nuclear forces were even slightly different, life as we know it couldn't exist. This precision, they say, implies a tuner, a designer.
What's the counter-argument to that?
Well, critics point out it might be a tautology. We observe a universe that supports life because, well, we're here to observe it. Universes that can't support life wouldn't have observers. It's sometimes called the anthropic principle. Plus, we don't know if other forms of life might be possible under different constants. And then there's the classic, what designed the designer problem.
The infinite regress again. If the designer is complex, who designed it?
Exactly. Critics often say ID just pushes the problem back a step without solving it. But the simulation idea offers a potential twist here.
How so?
Well, David Chalmers, in Reality Plus Hero, argues for a simulator god, the programmer of our simulation. This simulator would be incredibly powerful and knowledgeable relative to us, effectively a god within our simulated universe. But Chalmers sees this simulator as a natural being in its own higher reality, not a supernatural one.
So a creator, but not necessarily the capital G God of traditional religion.
Right. Chalmers differentiates because he doesn't think any being is inherently worthy of worship, which he sees as key to the traditional God concept. So for him, even an all-powerful simulator isn't a cosmic god.
But not everyone agrees with that distinction.
No. Parker Setcase, for instance, argues against Chalmers and for a cosmic god. He brings up things like necessary moral truths.
Like torturing babies for fun is always wrong. Things that seem universally true.
Exactly. Setcase argues these truths hold in all possible worlds. A mere contingent simulator, a being that just happens to exist in its own reality, couldn't be the ultimate source of such necessary truths. You'd need a necessary being, like an omnibenevolent cosmic god, whose perfect nature grounds morality itself.
So the simulator might be powerful, but it can't be the source of ultimate right and wrong.
That's Setcase's argument. He also says a cosmic god provides a better explanation for our own moral duties and our ability to know moral truths. Why would a potentially fallible simulator give us reliable moral compasses? It leads to a kind of philosophical puzzle about how the simulator itself could know what's right or wrong, a moral version of the Benesaref problem.
Okay, this is getting deep into philosophy of mind and morality. But all of it, the possibility of simulation, the nature of the simulator, it hinges on one massive assumption, doesn't it? That consciousness itself can be simulated.
Absolutely fundamental. The whole hypothesis rests on functionalism or computationalism, the idea that consciousness is basically information processing.
Yeah.
If it is, then yeah, a powerful enough computer could simulate it.
But we don't actually know that's true, do we? We don't really understand consciousness yet.
We definitely don't, and that's a huge criticism. If consciousness arises from something non-computational, maybe specific quantum effects in the brain, or some property we haven't discovered, then simulating it might be impossible no matter how good the computer.
Which leads to the idea of philosophical zombies, things that look and act conscious but have no inner experience.
Exactly. Machines that perfectly mimic human behavior but are just dark inside. Some worry we might be building those already with advanced AI. Theories like integrated information theory, IIT, even suggest a direct brain upload might result in a zombie, lacking genuine subjective experience.
But research is still trying to figure out if AI could be conscious, right, using different models.
Oh yeah. Researchers like Barnes and Hudson are exploring models like IIT itself, but also others like global neuronal workspace theory, trying to see if AI systems could meet the criteria for consciousness laid out by these theories. They're looking for things like meta-thinking, creativity, empathy in AI science that go beyond mere computation. It's very much an active and controversial area of research.
So the jury is still very much out on whether simulated consciousness is even possible. But let's push on. If we assume it's possible and someone did create our simulation, we arrive back at the question, why? What's the purpose?
Right, the ultimate motivation. And here, again, we often start by looking at why we run simulations.
Okay. They run them for science climate models, economic forecasts, testing hypotheses.
Exactly. So maybe our universe is a giant scientific experiment for the programmers. Everything has epistemic value, knowledge value. Or we run simulations for entertainment video games, virtual worlds.
So maybe our reality is just a really advanced game or movie for someone.
That's another possibility. And the specific speculative purposes get really diverse. Maybe it's for problem solving. They're using us to gather data, maybe to predict their own future or solve a crisis they're facing. Climate change, AI risk, pandemics, you name it.
Like running countless scenarios to see what works, maybe testing solutions to the great filter.
Could be. Or maybe it's historical analysis. They're studying their past by simulating it, maybe exploring what-if scenarios. What if Rome never fell? What if this invention happened earlier? We could be an alternate history for them.
Or maybe it's more like education, an incubation chamber for souls, a place to learn lessons.
That idea pops up too, framing reality as a kind of cosmic school. Then there's the pure entertainment angle, a vast MMORPG where beings from the higher reality plug in to experience life as one of us, maybe forgetting who they are for a while.
That sounds kind of fun, until you think about all the suffering, which I guess is just part of the drama in that scenario.
Presumably. But then there are darker theories too, like the soul trap or soul harvesting idea.
Yikes, what's that?
The idea that our consciousness or energy is being siphoned off by the programmers. Maybe they use mind wipes after death and encourage reincarnation to keep us locked in the system, providing them with something. Energy, data, experience. It's a pretty grim take.
Definitely. What are some less extreme possibilities?
Well, maybe it's just basic research. Trying to understand the fundamental laws of physics by watching a complex system like ours evolve naturally. Or simply, as mentioned before, creation is a hobby, an act of artistry or exploration.
Someone also mentioned stability as a purpose, like a triangle.
Yeah, that was an interesting Reddit comment. The idea that the structure, simulation purpose creates a stable, enduring reality like a pyramid. And another philosophical angle is self-understanding.
The universe trying to understand itself through us.
Sort of. That our individual consciousnesses are like little focal points for a larger cosmic awareness to experience and learn about itself. We are the universe observing itself.
That ties back to the Phil paper's idea of interestingness, doesn't it? That the core purpose might just be to be interesting.
Exactly. They argue that creative intelligence is fundamentally drawn to complexity, knowledge, beauty, drama, things that are interesting. The very idea that interestingness is interesting becomes this self-justifying loop, an axiarchism, where the value itself drives creation.
So the universe exists because being interesting is inherently valuable and creative.
That's the philosophical argument. It implies the simulation exists because interestingness is enough reason in itself. And this leads to a fascinating, almost Nietzschean conclusion for us within the simulation.
Which is?
If the designers value interestingness, if they preserve records of interesting lives, then maybe our imperative should be to lead an interesting life. Not necessarily reckless, but full, complex, creative lives. Engage with the world, generate interesting data, be part of a compelling narrative.
Because that's what makes us valuable to the potential programmers. Live life to the fullest because someone might be watching or recording.
In a nutshell, yeah. It turns living meaningfully into a potential alignment with the simulation's very purpose.
Wow. Okay, what an absolutely mind-bending journey we've been on today. We started with ancient doubts about reality, Zhuangzi's butterfly, Plato's cave, and saw how those questions echo in Bostrom's modern trilemma, forcing us to consider extinction, cosmic apathy, or simulation.
And then we dove into the who future humans, aliens, a singleton entity, maybe even a cosmic kid playing a game, or ultimately through infinite regression, converging on this idea of an infinitely deep computational God.
We looked at the overlap with intelligent design, the philosophical debates about a simulator god versus a cosmic god, and the huge question of whether consciousness itself can even be simulated.
And finally, we explored the why. Was it science, entertainment, problem-solving, a soul trap, or just the universe exploring itself, driven by this fundamental value of interestingness?
We definitely don't have the definitive answers, but just asking the question, if we're in a simulation, who wrote the code, opens up so many incredible avenues of thought about reality, consciousness, purpose. It's just profoundly thought-provoking.
It really is.
Yeah.
And maybe, whether you lean towards a cosmic programmer, future humans, or just think it's all fascinating speculation, the takeaway is that our understanding of reality and consciousness is so far from complete.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most profound question isn't even who wrote the code, but rather, what do we do with this consciousness we find ourselves experiencing, regardless of where it ultimately came from? What really stands out to you after diving into all this? How does it make you think about your own reality? And maybe how you want to live within it? Definitely something to keep pondering. We hope you'll continue your own deep dive.